It's being sponsored by the Tennessee Wildlife Resources Agency. Join us in preserving and protecting Tennessee's wildlife. All right, guys, this segment's been sponsored by Taylor's Archery. They're over at 100 East Lauderdale Street in Tullahoma, Tennessee. Or y'all can give owner Tracy Taylor a call, 931-563-7706. Get down there and take advantage of their indoor archery range. And be sure to tell Tracy thank you for all he does for our kids in the archery programs.
It's time. It's time.
It's time, guys.
To go see him.
It's time to go see him because Velvet Hunt about a month away from tonight. So, I mean, you better
that's
get
why
in
we
there.
bring them up so much. I mean, they have absolutely anything anybody that shoots archery needs.
Well, they do. And again, I mentioned it a while ago, but just these kids.
Absolutely.
And they have these archery programs now, and Tracy's all about it. But yeah, I'm telling you, if you want to get your bow ready,
that's the place to be.
And you need to get there now because what's going to happen is about a week before Velvet opens,
flooded.
Everybody's going to be down there trying to get their bow fixed, so go do it now. But tonight we're talking ledge fishing, okay? We was on Old Hickory Lake. You guys had an outstanding morning, it looked like. But let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier 12 to 15 foot, John, is kind of, you know, where you're finding the fish at the time. But what is it, first of all, a lot of people want to know, what is it, why are the fish there? Why 12 to 15 foot and not 25 foot? Why not 5 foot? Because they seem to be pretty across the board. That's where they're at.
It really depends on the depth of the lake, to be honest with you. I mean, when your average depth, I mean, it's hard to find 45, 50 foot of water on Old Hickory.
Yep.
I mean, if you do, it's up against the bluff or whatnot. So what you're really looking for is a point that's facing the current and the eddy that's created behind that point. So you'll have two areas. You'll have an area right in the middle of the current that you'll have a bunch of fish feeding on, and then you'll have an area right behind that area that's creating an eddy that the bigger fish will sit in. And a lot of times it may be a smaller school that's sitting there, or a lot of times it may be a bigger school that's sitting there. But that's generally where the bigger fish are found.
Well, I noticed when in the video, and you said that you'd have done it faster even if you could have, but this wasn't a slow approach. I mean, you guys are fishing aggressive.
Absolutely.
I mean, you were really ripping that bait
And like
through
John was mentioning, like Kentucky Lake and stuff, you can't crank that crankbait fast enough.
Yeah.
If you can just sit there and burn it as fast as you can burn it, it still ain't fast enough sometimes.
Well, they're just right on top of one another trying to get to it when they get aggressive
Well,
like that.
I don't know if you heard in the video, but there was a time when I mentioned to Dayton in the video that I'm getting scales all over my bait.
Yeah.
Well, I got 6 hooks. I said there's two treble hooks, and I had a scale on every treble hook, and it wasn't from the fish that I caught. It was from the group that I was pulling that bait through. And you'll see I hooked them on the top of the head. Those fish are reacting to that bait as you pull it through. The next cast, they're ready to feed. They're fired up and they're ready for something to come back.
And they want to get it first.
That's right.
That's another thing that we see a lot of times when with these new. One of the keys, you know, we talk about them, the good and bad sides all the time, but with these electronics, you can learn a lot. And one thing you'll learn is it might take you a minute to get that first fish fired up, but once you do, then it's a competition almost.
And then you can tell if they're there or not. You know.
Well, with old sonar, there was always a question in your mind as to what those fish are.
Yeah.
With the down scan, side scans that we have now, I may be giving too much. Those fish that are stuck to the bottom are bass or catfish.
Yeah.
Anything else don't say stuck to the bottom. I don't care if it's a carp or whatnot. They have to swim to breathe. The catfish and the bass are the only two things in our area lakes that don't.
Yeah. That's right,
So,
and you can tell a lot on these new electronics. You can tell the body shape of the fish.
We was with Daniel the other day on the live scope, and he was showing you how the catfish
they're
were
long and slender,
and you could see them moving more than other fish. And sure enough, you got a catfish.
And they would just slowly come up off the bottom and eat. But it does have a lot to do with finding them. But you don't have to have these electronics. I mean, you guys have both caught them for many, many years. You and Dayton both without them. So what are some things you're looking for? Say you're on a new body of water or something. Just, I mean, I know you mentioned eddies.
One thing that needs to be mentioned, in the past, we used to run around and drop buoys on points and fish 30, 35, 40 spots a day to find 3 spots that had fish on it to spend our tournament day. As I said, the electronics in the past didn't show this. When I practice now for a tournament, I don't make a cast.
A lot of people
I
don't
ride around, I mark what I want to mark. I may make one cast just to see if it's the size of fish I want to fish for. A lot of times I can tell by looking at the screen.
Yeah.
But Now, if you can see hard bottom, that's what you're looking for. Hard bottom in 10, 12 foot of water early in the summer is really what you're looking for. To the middle of July, that hard bottom's strong. Anytime after that, brush piles, stumps, they'll get toward the cover later in the year, and then they'll start moving into creeks as the bait moves into the creeks.
Yeah. It's almost
And
like
they'll stay on
spring
the same-
again, like a
it
miniature
turns
spring
over.
kind of.
It's- It's just it's moving migration from one spot to the next.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, you mentioned a while ago. Go ahead.
And there's some mussel beds. Old Hickory has
Well.
mussel beds, and there's some stuff to that here and there.
That's what I'm talking about, hard bottom. It could be rock, it could be a road bed, it could be mussel beds.
Yeah.
At Kentucky Lake, it was exclusively mussel beds of stuff I would fish. At Old Hickory, it's not necessarily all
Right.
mussel beds, but there are a lot of mussel beds out there. You can go idling down the river channel. When it lights up when the bottom lights up real bright,
Yeah.
that's a hard bottom.
Yeah.
I mean, if it goes all the way across your screen, that's a road bed.
Yeah.
You
Well,
know?
you pointed out a road bed on the graph
I
there.
did.
That was in the graph, and pointed out some fish sitting on that ledge on the
And
graph.
like in the old days, man, you had to go get a paper map, and you had to look at that map and judge how far you were from a bridge. If you're fishing a half mile out from one of them bridges at Guntersville, you didn't have you didn't have no GPS.
Yeah.
You had
just-
maps, so
you
we'd
just
sit there
use
at the room all
points
night and look at your map and try to figure out where the creek channel was and idle
Circling
across
all
it,
night,
try to
making
circle
this-
it, try to find it. Then, I mean, it's a different
changed
big
a lot.
time.
For
If
sure in
someone
that
doesn't
aspect.
have this kind of equipment, they can still fish this way. If you'll just pick a creek out or a small section of the lake out and pick out 8 or 10 highlights in that one section and make this happen, because that any little section of lake, if you pick it out and just dissect it, you'll be able to find fish like this.
Absolutely.
Especially this time of year.
Okay. Well, guys, let's get ready to go to this week's official tip of the week, I guess. We've been giving them all night, but let's do this week's tip of the week. This week's tip of the week's been sponsored by Cryolite Realtors, our buddy Wes Stone over there. Y'all give him a call, 615-289-9551, or stop by and see him there at 1432 West Main Street in Lebanon, and let Wes take care of all your real estate needs. All right, John, what you got for our tip tonight?
Well, I'm often asked what type of crankbaits I throw, and what we threw in the video tonight was mostly 6XDs. This is a Chartreuse Sexy Shad 6XD. This is a Chartreuse and Blue 6XD. The Chartreuse and Blue is what we caught most of our fish on in this video. But these aren't the only crankbaits to throw at certain times. This is a DD22. This is a much better bait. You can't really fish it as fast as you can a 6XD, but it's a much better bait for brush. It'll come through stuff a lot better than some of your other baits. This is a forgot the name of them. This is a Tim Horton bait. This is a Z20. This is a bait that Tim Horton's sponsored by. They've come out with it several years ago. But this bait, it dives down really fast, but it'll stall at a high speed. It gets to the bottom faster, but you really got to fish it slower.
Gotcha.
Than you normal. I always like to change a bait, whether it's a color or a vibration style. A lot of times when I'm in the middle of some fish, I'll stop and I'll put me on a balsa wood bait. This is a DT16. I also like a Z-Boss, which is I just showed you, a Z-Boss or a Zoom crankbait. I think it's called a Z4. But these balsa wood baits, they have a much tighter wobble than the other big crankbaits.
So basically, you got a box full of baits that look the same, but they're not the same. They all have a little different
Very
purpose,
similar,
so.
but each of them have their own
Yeah,
place.
that's
And I've
right.
had a lot of times people ask me, well, what's the best crankbait? Well,
All of them.
it really depends.
Yeah, that's right.
It really depends. They're
Well,
best colors.
Guys, we're going to get ready to take a quick break, but when we come back, you're going to be able to call in. We're going to open up the phone lines. We'll be back in just a minute.